Chapter 602 Making things difficult. However, when the seventh prince married his wife, King Rui and Zhou Huaiming had already left for Dongyang province. Therefore, during the banquet, King Kong saw that Gu Qingrui was getting increasingly popular and began extending an olive branch to him. However, it wasn't working. Instead, he brought up Princess Pingyang, who had always supported him. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui didn't take the olive branch and instead laughed with him and said some words of gratitude to Princess Pingyang. He started praising Princess Pingyang, stating she was capable, fair, cared for him, and helped him marry a good wife. When King Kong saw this, he knew it would not be easy to win Gu Qingrui over quickly. Thus, he then followed suit, praising Princess Pingyang. On the female side, Zhou Jiaying saw Zhou Ying glowing radiantly with happiness. In comparison, His Highness' attitude toward her only got colder. She was pissed. So, the flames of jealousy grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, Sun Miaoke suddenly retched, causing everyone to frown. The Empress Dowager thought of something and exclaimed happily, "Miaoke, are you pregnant?" Sun Miaoke was stunned for a moment after hearing this. It seemed to be true. However, even if it were true, it wasn't appropriate to spread it now, especially in front of the Empress. She could only shake her head and reply, "I think I caught a cold recently." The Empress Dowager didn't ask further after hearing this. Instead, she said, "You'd better be careful. After you return home, find a doctor to prescribe some medicine for you as soon as possible." "Yes, Imperial Grandmother. I will remember it." Sun Miaoke nodded. However, she still attracted the Empress' suspicious gaze, which made Sun Miaoke tremble in fear. It seemed that she would have to be more careful in the future. Zhou Jiaying was delighted by the opportunity. She looked at Zhou Ying and said, "Speaking of pregnancy, Mrs. Gu, you and Lord Gu have been married for more than 4 years, no? Why hasn't there been any good news?" When everyone heard that, they all looked at her. Right, Zhou Ying had been married for many years but did not have children yet. Suddenly, everyone started discussing whether she could not give birth. The Empress looked at Zhou Ying's bright and tender little face and knew she was living a comfortable life, which made her highly jealous. Thinking about the relationship between the two parties, since the Emperor did not allow her to touch Gu Qingrui, she could at least touch Zhou Ying. Thinking of this, she said, "This is a problem. If you can't give birth, you have to ask your husband to marry a concubine as soon as possible for the sake of having children. How about this? I have a distant niece who happens to be in the capital. Although her family is a little poor, she is delicate and pretty. I'll send her to your residence later to keep you company." Zhou Jiaying smiled and didn't say anything more. At this time, the Empress Dowager asked worriedly, "Zhou Ying, have you seen a doctor?" "Empress Dowager, my husband is a doctor, and am in good health. It was just that there had been constant disasters over the past few years, so we decided to delay having children. He was too busy after coming to the capital, so we have been delaying further." Zhou Ying turned her head and replied, "That's not an excuse. No matter how busy Lord Gu is, he can never be busier than the Emperor," the Empress quipped in. "That's different. No matter how busy the Emperor is, he rarely leaves the palace. But my husband mostly lives in his greenhouse. How can it be the same? So, you are rejecting my good intentions. There's no need for that. Well, discuss this matter between us, husband and wife. Lord Gu is a meritorious minister of our dynasty. I can't watch him without an heir. I will personally take care of this matter." "Empress!" the Empress Dowager coldly shouted. "Your attitude will, at the very least, affect the prestige of the Emperor and King Hui." After the Empress Dowager finished speaking, she waved her hand to let her out. After the Empress had left, Nanny Lu asked, "Empress Dowager, isn't that too harsh? I'm afraid that the Empress will hate you. She hates me already. Ever since she was grounded, she's always been moody. If she weren't scolding one person, she would be scolding another. Her temperament is really too different from Empress Zhou's. The Empress Dowager sighed, unfortunate. After Nanny Lu heard this, her heart ached for the Empress Dowager. If she cared too much, the Emperor would suspect her of taking control. If she cared too little, everything would look terrible on her. She was stuck in a dilemma. After the Empress left the Empress Dowager's palace, she was so furious that her face turned green. This time, however, she did not flare up again. There was one sentence that she had taken to heart, which was that her attitude represented King Hui. She could not embarrass her son and needed to wait for him to return and discuss another big plan. Thinking of this, she asked her substitute nanny, Nanny Yu, "Oh right, how long has it been since King Hui sent a letter?" Chapter 60 For the reaction of all sides, it's been almost a month, and the river embankment should be almost completed. Perhaps His Highness is already on his way back. The Empress did not reply after hearing this. Instead, she said, "Pick out 2 young and beautiful palace maids. Mistress, this matter can't continue. Otherwise, the Empress Dowager, just prepare it. It will be useful sooner or later." Yes. After hearing this, Nanny Yu did not try to persuade her. After sending the Empress back to the palace, she began to search for beautiful palace maids. After the Emperor learned of the Empress' foolish actions, his impression of her dropped again. It had even accumulated into disappointment. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't easily get rid of her, he would have done so long ago. However, Gu Qingrui had been married for more than 4 years and still had no children. He was concerned, and he was considering asking about it. He called Xiao Heng in and asked him to pass on the message to his trusted aide in the southwest. He wanted to win over the morale of the southwest army as soon as possible. On the other side, after returning to the mansion, Zhou Jiaying told King Kong about the dispute between Zhou Ying and the Empress. "This Zhou Ying is really bold. Even we didn't dare to contradict the Empress, but she did so regardless. It can't be that there's really something wrong with her," and she became angry from embarrassment after being exposed. King Kong asked thoughtfully. If that were the case, he would know how to rope Gu Qingrui in. "I can't say for sure." Zhou Jiaying didn't make any unnecessary remarks after seeing that he had considered her words. "Your Highness, do you want to see Xan tonight? I still have some things to deal with." King Kong turned around and walked toward the study afterward. Zhou Jiaying smiled, then turned around and went back to her courtyard. After watching them from afar, Lu Yi, Hong Suzi's maid, commented unhappily, "Mistress, this secondary consort is always pestering His Highness. She's really shameless." "Who cares? My status still maintains. As long as my father doesn't fall, His Highness won't dare to neglect me." After Hong Suji finished speaking, she turned around and returned to the main courtyard. She had seen the relationship between His Highness and Zhou Jiaying along the way and knew they were once a close couple. However, she found this was not the case after entering the residence. At the very least, His Highness was not as infatuated with Zhou Jiaying as she had imagined. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so obedient and gentle to Hong Suji. However, the more he acted like this, the more she dared not give him her heart. Otherwise, she would end up worse than Zhou Jiaying. She had to remain rational. At the very least, she would not implicate her family. Then, while King Kong was still patient with her, she had to bear a son as soon as possible to have a firm foothold in this residence. After Sun Miaoke left the 7th prince's residence, she didn't return directly to her place. Instead, she turned around and went to the Sun family's residence to find a doctor to take her pulse. She was really pregnant. After sending off the doctor, Mother Sun smiled and said, "That's great. Otherwise, your status will be in danger if Gu Wanning gives birth to the eldest son. It's just as dangerous now." Sun Miao replied nervously. "What's going on? Are you talking about Gu Wanning?" Mother Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. After spending time with her, Gu Wanning is a good person. She doesn't have any bad intentions. Sun Miaoke shook her head. But it's hard to say for the others. At that point, she told her mother about how the fourth prince had sent someone into the residence to give her and Gu Wanning contraceptives. She added, "Today, when everyone was happy about the news, only the Empress strangely looked at me. I think it won't be easy to give birth to this child successfully." Chapter 605 Counterattack. When Mother Sun heard that she was in a situation where there was a wolf in front and a tiger behind, she was worried for a moment. She suggested, "Why don't you come back and stay? As for the imperial residence, you can leave it to the butler to look after." "No, if I come back now, wouldn't that be telling everyone that I'm pregnant? I have to return and stall for time as much as possible. It would be fine once my pregnancy is stable. You must be careful." "Don't worry, there's the butler around. I'll tell him to help me." "All right, remember to send a message if there's anything." After Mother Sun finished speaking, she asked someone to go to the kitchen to get some of Sun Miaoke's favorite snacks and then sent her back. After Zhouing finished bathing at night, she spread her divine sense to look at the Kong residence. At that moment, King Kong was caring for the baby while Zhou Jiaying was taking a bath. Seeing this, a wicked smile flashed across Zhou Ying's eyes. She poured 2 packets of fermented liquid from her storeroom into Zhou Jiaying's cup. Sure enough, Zhou Jiaying did not check it after showering and drank it all in one gulp. After that, Zhou Jiaying's stomach started to growl when they were both having a good time in bed. Soon, she started farting. King Kang's interest was immediately lost. He left with a look of disdain and went straight to the main courtyard. Zhou Jiaying was so angry that she screamed and broke the kettle and cups on the bed. However, she quickly lost her temper and went straight to the toilet. "Serves you right," Zhouing gloated. "This is just a warning. You won't be so lucky next time." As for tests, she was not afraid of getting discovered. With the current technology, Zhou Jiaying would never find any trace of fermented liquid. She could only admit that she was unlucky. "What mischievous things have you done? Why are you smiling evilly?" Gu Qingrui, who had finished washing up, walked over and asked curiously. Zhouing did not hide it from him and told him about what she had done. Gu Qingrui was stunned for a moment before he smiled. "I hope King Kong doesn't develop any psychological trauma from this. That will depend on his mental forte." "Right. We should get busy, too." Gu Qingrui quickly lifted the blanket and crawled under the covers with her. The next day, after the morning court session, the emperor asked Gu Qingrui to stay and asked, "I heard that the empress lost her composure at the banquet yesterday. Did it affect you and your wife badly?" "Not really." "Then, you too. Do you want me to find a few beauties?" Gu Qingrui quickly waved his hand and replied, "No need. It's not that we can't make any. It's just that we don't want any babies at the moment." Chapter 606 Making a Move on Him, I Will Take My Leave. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Behind him, the emperor looked at his back, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's too late to stand by the side now. As soon as Gu Qingrui stepped out of the palace gates, he bumped into King Kong again. A trace of impatience flashed across Gu Shengrui's eyes, but he still went forward and bowed. "Greetings, King Kong. There's no need to be so polite." King Kong helped him and asked, "I heard from my secondary consort about yesterday's matter. She did not do it on purpose. Please don't blame her. It's just a quarrel, there's no blame. If your highness has nothing else, I will be heading home for breakfast. Why don't we go to my residence for breakfast? We're cousins, after all. We haven't had a proper meal together yet. When our restaurant opens, we can have a good gathering there. I still have to go to the manor after breakfast. You don't need to be busy with the manor. Just leave it to the servants. Have you forgotten my current position? I research agriculture. If I don't keep an eye on it, how can I research them? King Kong was a little unhappy when he saw that Gu Qingrui wouldn't budge. He reluctantly replied, "All right, let's talk another day. I will take my leave." Gu Qingrui cupped his fists and bowed before turning around to leave. At the same time, his face darkened. All parties were making a move on him, using their lack of children as an excuse. He had to be more careful in the future. After returning home and having breakfast, he told Zhou about this matter and said, "You should be careful. Don't fall into their trap." "I understand. Don't you think it's time for us to have a child?" "To be honest, now that King Rui is not around, it's time to be vigilant. It is not a suitable time." "That's right. King Hui is probably coming back soon, too. Once he returns, there will definitely be a commotion. Let's wait a little longer." "Yeah. I'll go out with you today to look at the new manor and see how Uncle Fong is doing there. Let's go together. Wait a minute, and let me change my clothes." Zhou returned to her room and changed into a clean set of clothes before heading out with him. First, Gu Qingrui went to his usual manor, and then Shizhu drove the carriage to the new manor. Halfway there, Zhou saw Gu Shengrui's notebook and had no choice but to head back and deliver it to him. At the same time, she made up her mind to buy a carriage soon. Otherwise, if something happened, it would be inconvenient to have only one carriage. After arriving at the manor, Zhou lifted the curtain when a mouthful of soil hit her. The wind was so strong that she could not open her eyes. Chapter 607 Planning 1. Zhou nodded in agreement. "Great. Speed is important, but not at the cost of quality. You keep an eye on them. I'll make rounds, and we'll talk in detail after that. Do you need someone to accompany you?" "No need. It's fine as long as Shizhu follows me." "All right, the wind is strong. You two be careful." Head Fong turned around and left. Zhou brought Shizhu to check on the construction progress. Many stones were deeply embedded in the ground because no one had cared for this manor for years. There were many peach trees expanding over 200 acres, but the rest of the land was rugged and barren. Even Shizhu, who had never worked in the fields before, could see that this land was barren. She could not help but ask, "Madam, I'm afraid this land won't work. Was Master deceived into buying this place? With the price of wasteland, what good land can you buy? Besides, I don't plan to grow crops. I plan just to plant grass." "Plant grass and raise livestock?" "Yes, we can harvest a lot of grass in such a large area as long as we can use it reasonably," Zhou replied while looking around. She walked into the peach plantation and took a good look at them. Perhaps because of the many disasters over the years, all the peach trees were not in good condition. The seedlings were basically all dead and could be broken with just one hand. More than half of the adult trees were also dead. Although those still alive had bloomed flowers, very few bore fruit. Also, there was a lot of peach resin covering the tree. No wonder they did not mention peach trees when they sold the land. To put it bluntly, they were worthless. It was fine, as Zhou could dig them up and repurpose the land. There was a river in front of the peach plantation. The river was deep and wide, and it looked very clear. She could build a water wheel here, which would be convenient for the manor. Madam, look, there are fish in this river, and they're not the small ones. Shizhu pointed at a spot and said. Zhou spread out her divine senses and looked into the river. There were quite some fish, most of which she had released from her interspace. They were not on alert and were gathering in the water weeds. It may be because there were not many people here, so they lived quite comfortably. She said, go back and tell Uncle Fong they can fish them up when they have time. These can be distributed to the employees. Unfortunately, we didn't bring a net with us. Otherwise, we could have fished them up now. Well, we can just bring it with us the next time we come. Let's go. We should head back since we're done surveying the place. They entered Head Fang's dormitory, and Head Fang immediately ran over and asked, Madam, do you want to have lunch here? No, it's all right. We'll need to head back soon. Zhou answered and saw a pen and paper on the table. She took the piece of paper and quickly outlined the general appearance of the manor. She planned out a few areas and said, when the time comes, we'll need to cut down this peach plantation and plant a total of 1,000 acres of grass. As for the seeds, I'll give them to you later. Remember to leave a few walking paths in the middle for easy care. After the summer harvest, if there were red sweet potatoes or white potato seedlings, they could also be planted. It will improve the soil quality, and the sweet potatoes could still grow back after harvesting them twice. On this side of the grass field, I'll try to find some soybean and peanut seeds to plant them. They can be used to nourish the land, and they are also great for providing tofu and oil for the restaurant. Further down is going to be the vegetable garden. Some fruit trees might also be planted here, so remember to put more fertilizer here and plow deeply. I'll get someone to install a water wheel later. It'll be much more convenient to water everything this way. She did some yoga on the bed and stretched her muscles before getting up. After breakfast, she called a guard and went to the horse market to buy a relatively luxurious carriage. Just as they were about to leave the market, someone suddenly shouted, Mrs. Gu, wait for me. Zhou turned her head to look. She paused momentarily before remembering that he was the middleman who had helped her purchase her shop. She asked the guards to park the carriage, got off the carriage, and waited at the side. When he approached them, she smiled and asked, Manager Xiao, are you also here to buy horses? A carriage. My previous carriage broke down, so I'm considering buying a new one. I wonder if your residence is still lacking helpers? Manager Xiao asked. Where did you get the new people from? Same old, from the same friend last time. What's their background? Some of them are disaster refugees, and some of them are slaves sold from the south. From the south? Did they commit a crime? Chapter 609 Newcomers 1. It is as you predicted, but most of them are implicated by the main family's crimes. I know your requirements well, and most of them are in line with your conditions. This was why I called out to you. Sure, let's go over and take a look. Yes. You can decide once you think they're suitable. Let's go. Zhou got into her carriage after that. However, Manager Xiao didn't get in with her. Instead, he sat beside the carriage driver and began to show the way. After some time, they stopped outside a small courtyard in the northern district. After getting out of the carriage, the guard stood outside to take care of the carriage while Zhou followed Manager Xiao into the small courtyard. After some pleasantries, Zhou decided on two families after a series of selections. One of them was a butler in his 40s. He had a wife and two children who had just come of age. They were both in their prime. The other family was a gardener, and his wife used to be in charge of managing a small team. They had two daughters, one 12 and the other 8. Although the two families were both from the south, they had different masters. Furthermore, Zhou bought 4 more maidservants, as she knew they would be short of hands once they got busy. After signing the servant contracts, she paid the silver and returned to her residence. When she reached home, she asked Mother Chiu to settle them down. Once the newcomers finished eating their first meal, she called everyone to the backyard garden. She first let the people in the residence introduce themselves so that the newcomers could get to know them. Once that was done, only the newcomers introduced themselves. "I'll go first," the man who used to be a butler spoke out. "My name is Nyofugue. I used to be a butler in the home of a magistrate in the south. More than a month ago, my master's house was raided by the government, and all the servants were sold." He pointed to his wife and introduced her. "This is my wife, Mrs. Jiang. She was the nanny of our previous young miss and in charge of managing her courtyard. My daughter is Nyo Lirong, the servant girl of our previous young miss. My son, Nyo Deli, had learned accounting from an accountant but had never been an official disciple. However, he still had no problem with general bookkeeping. My name is Miao Daji, a gardener in our local justice court. My wife, Mrs. Liang, was originally a chef specializing in making noodles. We have 2 daughters, the older one is called Miao Xiaoyu, and the younger one is Miao Xiaoxue." When it was the remaining 4 maidservants' turn, the 4 stepped forward together and requested, "Mistress, please give us a new name." Zhou struggled internally after hearing that, as she was terrible at naming. She took a good look at the 4 of them and replied, "All right, according to your current position, from east to west, it's Chuanxiang, Xiaxiang, Chuxiang, and Dongxiang. If I remember correctly, Chuanxiang and Dongxiang know how to cook. You guys can work in the kitchen with Mrs. Liang. Nyo Lirong, Xiaxiang, and Chuxiang will stay and serve in the main courtyard. Mrs. Jiang would be Mother Chiu's assistant and manage all the affairs in the residence. As for Nyofugue, he could take care of the front yard while Miao Daji could lead others to trim the flowers and plants in the manor. Miao Xiaoyu and Miao Xiaoxue, do you want to cook? If you want to, I can arrange for you to learn in the kitchen." "Can I? I would like to follow my mother and learn how to make noodles." Miao Xiaoxue raised her head and asked in surprise. "Of course, go ahead to the kitchen to help out." Zhou then looked at Miao Xiaoyu. "I like gardening, so I want to learn more gardening from my father." Miao Xiaoyu stole a glance at Miao Daji after she finished speaking. Zhou looked at Miao Daji's darkened face and asked, "Is there anything wrong?" "My father said that gardeners are all men. It's too tiring for a woman to do it, so, Miao Xiaoyu stuttered and shut her mouth. Chapter 6:10 Newcomers 2. Zhou looked at Miao Daji in surprise. Although she didn't know why he rejected Miao Xiaoyu, she didn't want to kill a child's interest. Therefore, she advised him, although there is a saying that you should love what you do, if you don't have a strong passion for it, you will be a layman for the rest of your life and never reach the level of a master. However, if she's really passionate about her career, she would wholeheartedly devote her life to research and creating something new. It would also give her a happier life. Taking the easiest example, cooking. If a person is passionate about cooking, even if she doesn't have the talent, she would devote her entire being to learning it. She would also actively study and create new dishes. However, without a deep passion, she would just learn the bare minimum and not be interested in improving herself. No matter how talented she would be in that field, she would be average. Therefore, if a child wants to learn something, we should encourage them. Only after learning would the child know if it was suitable for them. If she can really learn well in the future, how about I make a flower bed for her? Miao Daji pondered for a moment and looked at Miao Xiaoyu. Are you sure you want to learn gardening? After you start, you can't give up halfway. I want to learn. Miao Xiaoyu's eyes lit up. Alright, from tomorrow onwards you'll follow me. Meow Daji nodded. Alright, I'll tell you all my requirements. Showing smiled. I only have 2 requirements for you all. One is loyalty. There is only one outcome to betraying your master, and that is to live a life worse than death. The second is diligence and neatness. I won't punish those who slack off. I'll only deduct your monthly salary. It'll be 100 coppers per discovery, and there's no limit to that. In other words, if this month's salary isn't enough to cover your deduction, your next month's salary will be deducted until you get diligent. Butler Nyo and Mother Chio will keep an eye on everyone in the future. Of course, I'm not inhumane. If you're really sick, you can take a sick leave and not get their monthly salary deducted for the day. Yes, mistress. Nyo Fugue and Mother Chio replied at the same time. Alright, get to work. Nyo Deli, come with me. After Zhouing finished speaking, she led him to the main courtyard. Nyo Deli was surprised by her beckoning and followed Zhouing nervously. When they arrived at the main courtyard, Zhouing brought him directly to her study and took out an account book. This is the account book I keep. Take a look and record our accounts in this format in the future. It's also convenient for me to check the accounts. Nyo Deli finally let out a sigh of relief. He was still afraid that Zhouing would have an opinion of him, but it turned out that she wanted to test him. He took the account book and looked at it seriously. After a moment, his eyes lit up because Zhou Ying's tabulated accounting method was simple and clear to understand. Not only was it easy to remember, but it was also very convenient to calculate the final bill. After studying carefully, he replied, Mistress, I'll remember this method. From today onwards, I will strictly follow your format. Zhouing nodded and took out some more account books. These are all the accounts in the residence. Go back and study it and make a budget for next month. I understand. Yes, give me an answer in 3 days. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Remember, you only have one chance. I hope you can seize it firmly. Yes, I will do my best to finish my apprenticeship as soon as possible. Nyo Deli answered and picked up the account books, leaving quickly to study them. After he left, Zhouing asked Shizhu to call Kuihua over. She told Kuihua, later, choose the same materials you are wearing and make 2 sets of spring clothes for each newcomer. In addition, Nyo Lirong will be in charge of serving tea. As for Xiaoxiang and Qiuxiang, you can make arrangements for their designation. I'll leave this courtyard to you in the future. I hope you'll take responsibility and don't disappoint me. Chapter 611 Knocking on their doors. Thank you for your appreciation. Mistress. Kuihua immediately bowed. Previously, when Nyo Lirong was assigned to the main courtyard, she feared her job would be taken over. It seemed that she was overthinking it. Managing people is different from managing things. You must reward and punish clearly, use firm yet diplomatic methods, and be fair and just. I hope you can get everyone in the courtyard settled down as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll have no choice but to get someone else to do it. Do you understand? Yes, I will make arrangements as soon as possible. After she was done with arranging everyone, Zhouing returned to her room. Nyo Lirong brought her a cup of tea as soon as she sat down. Zhouing raised her head and said, in the future, if I don't ask for tea, there's no need to serve it. Just prepare a cup of water, it will do. Yes, mistress. Nyo Lirong's body stiffened momentarily before she carefully stood to the side. You don't have to be nervous. I'm just letting you know my preference. What were you best at when caring for your previous young miss? Zhouing asked. Preparing tea and makeup. Zhouing understood that she must have previously been the young girl's confidant. She continued to ask, Have you learned simple ingredient theories, such as what foods go well with each other, or the identification of poisons, and so on? No, I have only learned what kind of constitution or season would be suitable for drinking what kind of tea. Alright, I'll leave serving tea to you in the future. Remember to check everything carefully before making tea, just in case. I understand. You may leave. Zhou dismissed her, opened the teacup, and took a look. It was chrysanthemum tea. Brewing a good cup of tea is an art. Compared to the tea she usually simply brewed, it was better in taste and color. After drinking it, Zhou got up and went to her study. She took out a few books from her interspace about what plants were suitable for growing in various soil types and picked out those for the alkali-type soil. Turning back to Shanghe village. After half a year of hard work, Constable Zhang finally got to marry Guzi. Today was the day of their engagement. At the same time, the date of their wedding was also set. After the pleasantries, the patriarch sent him and the matchmaker away. When he was about to turn around and head home, he saw a carriage enter the village from afar. The patriarch remembered that Manager Liu was here for their sweet potato seedlings, so he immediately went up to greet them with a smile. He was stunned when he saw the unfamiliar coachman. Just as he was about to turn around and walk back, he suddenly heard someone call him father. He turned his head and looked over. When he saw who it was, his face darkened, and he replied in a strange tone, "Yo, isn't this County Magistrate Chenping? I don't deserve to be your father, nor do I dare to be one. If you are here for work-related matters, go to the village chief. If it's for personal matters, you're not welcome. Z has remarried, and there's no longer any connection between you two." What? Z has remarried? Chenping asked in astonishment. Why are you surprised? You two have already divorced, so she's free to remarry. Isn't it normal for her to remarry when she meets a suitable person? Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, don't blame me for gathering my clansmen to kick you out. After the patriarch finished speaking, he flung his sleeves and headed home. Seeing this, Chenping hurriedly chased after him, but he was still a step too late. The door was shut in his face by the patriarch. Father, father. Please listen to my explanation. Chenping immediately knocked hurriedly on the door. The patriarch roared before he could finish his words, "Get lost." Everyone in the house was shocked by his shouts and immediately rushed out. Especially Guzi, who felt she was hallucinating. Was that the bastard Chenping's voice? Husband, who is it outside? Why is he calling you his father? Mrs. Wang walked over and asked. Z could also live better in her husband's house that way. Dream on. Gu Chenzhen coldly snorted. They are not 3-year-old children. You sent people to kill them time and time again, do you think they will go back with you? The patriarch asked sarcastically. No, I didn't, you didn't send anyone over personally, but do you dare to say that you don't know about it? After speaking, the patriarch stood up and added coldly, don't quibble when all you have to do to prove your innocence is to follow me to the Mother Goddess temple and swear you don't know. Do you dare to do that? Chenping's heart froze when he heard that. Mother God appearing at the capital's execution ground and striking down lightning spread throughout the Ming dynasty. How could he dare to go to the Mother God temple to swear his innocence? He looked at the furious Gu family and knew that it was impossible for him to have anything to do with them if he did not do something. Chapter 613 No way. Chenping immediately knelt and kowtowed. It was my mistake before, and I didn't stop Mrs. Zhao from doing what she did. Please forgive me. From now on, I will definitely turn over a new leaf and treat the two children well. The patriarch immediately kicked him in the chest and spat, You didn't stop her, but you must have been involved, no? Don't think I don't know that you instigated the refugees to cause trouble in Dongyang. Lord Sun still has the confessions of those people from back then. Should I go and look through them? After Chen Ping fell to the ground, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his eyes. He did not expect them to know so much. So, this time, the patriarch did not give him a chance to speak. Let me guess, why did you lower yourself to visit us this time? Because the Zhao family can't help you anymore, right? Because someone is investigating you, right? You want the three of them back now because you want Qingrui to help you get through this calamity on their account, right? I've seen many shameless people in my life, but it's rare to see someone as shameless and self-righteous as you. Are you still worthy of being a man? Back then, the Gu family sponsored you to take the imperial examination and later helped you in your career. Didn't they do their best? Once something happened to the Gu family, your attitude changed faster than flipping a page in a book. Yes, we've become sinners. You're afraid of being implicated, and we understand that. So, we won't make things difficult for you. Even when you divorced Z, we didn't say anything. However, the only thing you should have never done was allow Mrs. Zhao and your shameless mother to humiliate and endanger them. Do you even think with your brain? Now that you need them and want them to help you, do you only want to reconcile? I'm telling you, no way. You should leave. Otherwise, don't blame us for taking action. Gu Qinzhen opened the door at this moment. Get lost. Mrs. Wang got up and wanted to drag him out. When the patriarch saw this, he immediately stopped her because he knew that Chen Peng was a person who cared greatly about his reputation. Moreover, he was cold-blooded, heartless, and ruthless. If they really dragged him out and made him lose his dignity, Chen Peng would bite them before he died. It wasn't worth it. He ordered Chen Peng, leave. We're not stupid. We won't let you use us again and again. Don't come back again. The Gu family will no longer acknowledge you as a relative. Seeing that there was no room for redemption, Chen Peng did not stand on ceremony. He stood up and patted the dust off his clothes before walking out. At the same time, he was thinking about how to repay their humiliation today. Look at his heartless behavior. Now that there's no hope, he just leaves without saying a word. I can't believe I was that blind back then to actually let Z marry him. Z is now scarred for the rest of her life. Mrs. Wang roared and started crying. Alright, it's already in the past. Z has already walked out of her trauma, and there's no need to think about those unhappy things anymore. Go over later and ask Z to stay at home for a while. We'll talk more after he leaves. The patriarch suggested. Yes, that bastard is cunning. We have to be on guard. After Mrs. Wang wiped her tears, she ran out. However, she did not go directly to Guzi's house. Instead, she went to the foot of the mountain to buy some incense and candles. She then entered the Mother God temple and lit 3 incense sticks to pray for Guzi and her 2 children's safety. Before she left, she even donated a tael of silver. Sigh, the Gu family really doesn't have a good eye for choosing a son-in-law. Every one of them is more ruthless than the other. Third aunt even lost her life. Gu Qinzhen sighed. Chapter 6:14 Paying close attention, what are you talking about? Aren't the others quite decent? Look at how capable Zishang's husband, Hu Chun, is. The patriarch glared at him unhappily. Indeed, the external environment is also very important in influencing their attitude. If nothing had happened to the Gu family, their lives would have been glorious. We were just unfortunate that those sons-in-law were less than decent. Gu Qingxi added. What do you mean by just less than decent? To put it bluntly, they just despise the poor and love the rich. Go on with your day. I have to go to the fields and water the white potatoes. The patriarch dismissed everyone and went to the fields. However, he wasn't in the mood to work when he reached the fields. He sat near the fields and looked at the crops from afar. Uncle, why are you sitting here? Are you okay? Gu Qingxi saw him sitting in the distance and immediately ran over to ask. It's fine. I'm just old and tired. I can't compare to your youngster's energy. Why didn't you go to town today? The patriarch asked. Didn't manager's son mention that the restaurant would be opened after the wheat harvest? So we took the opportunity to plant more chilies and cumin. I came back to see if it was time to water them. You're the only male left at home. Remember to let us know if you can't handle the workload. I know, uncle. But I've hired people to take care of it, and I'm just here to take a look. By the way, do you still have cumin seeds at home? I think they're easy to take care of. I think so, but I'm unsure how much we have. I'll ask my mom when I get back. It's fine. I'll ask her myself later. All right then. If there's no problem, I have to go down to the fields now. Go ahead. After he left, the patriarch also got up and went to work. At night, Gu Qingrui did not come back. Zhou finished her meal quickly and brought a piece of subpar bread to the front yard to feed the fish. At the same time, she spread out her divine sense to observe the situation of the newcomers in the residence. Miao Daji's family was well behaved. They ate, worked, and slept without any distractions. The Niu family expressed their views on their new master. Although they felt that the family's foundation was slightly thin, they were still satisfied that they could return to their original position. Chuanxiang and Dongxiang had worked in the kitchen before, so they quickly adapted to their current tasks. Although they didn't talk much, they got along very well with everyone. Chuxiang, the most talkative and lively, was very curious about Gu Qingrui. She constantly asked Kuihua about him. However, Kuihua didn't usually talk much and was also tight-lipped. She only revealed shallow information and didn't say anything else. It was Xiaxiang, who did not talk much, who caught Zhou Ying's attention. This was because Xiaxiang would listen incredibly intently whenever Gu Qingrui was mentioned. Zhou Ying remembered how Xiaxiang had introduced herself before. Xiaxiang mentioned that she was a second-class servant girl who served the main wife of her previous family. She was also responsible for delivering news to the main wife. Was it in Xiaxiang's nature to pay attention to this information, or did she have other motives? Zhou Ying knew she had to pay more attention to her. After talking about Gu Qingrui, Chuxiang changed the topic and asked, Sister Kuehua, is Shizhu the mistress' personal maid? I often see the mistress bring her along everywhere. No, mistress doesn't have a personal maid. It would be more appropriate to say that Sister Shizhu is her guard. She only followed the mistress during the day and would head back to her room to sleep at night. Don't we need to keep watch at night? There's no need. Ever since I came, mistress hasn't ordered anyone to stay guard overnight. Kuihua then warned them, oh right, don't go into their bedroom without mistress' permission. Mistress doesn't like strangers entering their bedroom. Chapter 615 A List of the Dead. Mistress is so special. Maybe it has something to do with their experience, as mistress herself has always taken care of their bedroom. Kuihua then asked, oh, what are you two good at? I'm skilled in needlework and was previously in charge of my young miss clothes. Xiang replied. I'm not particularly skilled in anything, but I do have a good memory. I was previously in charge of running errands and passing messages, Xiaxiang explained. All right. Xiang will be in charge of master and mistress clothes. Remember, just the outer clothes are enough, as mistress will prepare their underwear. As for Xiaxiang, you can start with the odd jobs and preparing meals for master and mistress. When we have a more suitable place for you in the future, I'll recommend you to mistress. After that, Zhou listened to them chat for a while before leaving. After feeding the fish, she walked around the courtyard and checked the hygiene of various places. After confirming it was all up to standard, she returned to her courtyard. She got someone to boil some water and take a bath. Then, she lay down on her bed and read. Before sleeping, she spread out her divine senses to scan the surroundings. After confirming that only the Shizhu was sleeping in the West Wing room, she locked the doors and windows and entered her inner space. First, she took a look at the demands of people everywhere. Soon, she filtered out 3 pieces of crucial information. One was from the south, and it was a prayer from the wife of a county magistrate. Apparently, the first prince had forcefully recruited able-bodied men to rush his work. Many people had died, and she prayed that Mother God could bless the suffering commoners and stop this enslavement. The other was to pray that her husband would not be implicated. After Zhou understood what was going on, she followed the faith of the county magistrate's wife and came to an exquisite courtyard in the county town. At this moment, the lady was coaxing a 3-year-old boy to sleep, but her eyes were full of worry. Zhou found the study room, but she didn't find anyone. Ultimately, she had no choice but to head to the county government office. Zhou soon saw a man in his 20s staring at a list and sighing. She leaned over and glanced at it, shocked to see that it was a list of today's deaths, with more than 50 people on it. More than 50 people died daily at this construction site. How terrifying was that? If this continued, how much more would have to die before the river embankment was repaired? Furthermore, this was after the various disasters. The labor force had already decreased drastically, and no wonder the county magistrate was anxious. At this moment, a man in his 20s walked in and spoke up, "Master, have you approved the compensation? Tomorrow morning, we must send the bodies back along with the money. Xian, these are 10 taels of silver for a life. These are all strong laborers, the pillars of their families. How do you want me to approve such a small amount of compensation? Moreover, the number of victims has been increasing daily over the past half-month. I really can't sign this." After hearing this, Xian opened his mouth, not knowing how to persuade him. But after a moment, he still urged, "But the dead can't be brought back to life. 10 taels of silver is enough for an ordinary family to survive for 2 to 3 years. If you don't sign this, they won't even get the 10 taels of silver." "Ha, King Hui just wants my life." The county magistrate mocked his situation. He firmly believed that if this continued, his people would probably assassinate him soon. If it really doesn't work, well, just side with him. Otherwise, I'm afraid, no, the river embankment is related to the livelihood and lives of our entire county, or even more than 10 counties downstream. We can't just muddle along like the previous magistrates. So, but there's no news of the memorials and letters we sent out. It's obvious that they had been stopped. We're all alone now. Chapter 6:16 Lightning Talisman. Tomorrow, bring more people to the construction site. We can't. That will make King Hui, no matter what, we can't sit still and wait for death. Otherwise, we won't even be able to avenge ourselves. After the county magistrate decided, he locked the name list in his drawer. Master, 10 taels of silver is too little. Since he treats human lives as expendable, he at least need to cough up more silver. The county magistrate walked out after that. Xian hesitated for a moment before he left. After he had walked far away, he quickly got into a carriage and left the city. After arriving at the construction site, he looked for the King Hui. "This lowly one greets your highness." So, did he agree? No, he wants to bring a group of people over tomorrow to cause trouble. He wants to at least double the compensation for the dead. If he doesn't know how to appreciate my favors, so be it. When the time comes, he won't be returning. But, what, do you have no confidence in yourself, or do you not want to be a county magistrate? No, why? You thinking of giving up halfway? You will be buried with him if that's your intention. When Zhou heard this, she immediately recalled how Lord Sun was replaced and how he took down the entire Pingyang residence. She was instantly pissed. She knew this was to be expected. If he was capable of executing officials at will, why would he care about the lives of ordinary people? After hearing this, whether it was for the sake of his life or the position of county magistrate, Xian immediately shut up and retreated. After he had walked far away, Zhou drew the most powerful lightning talisman that she could and stuck it on King Hu's body. King Hui instantly convulsed and fell to the ground. He was charred black, and his mouth emitted hot steam comically. After confirming that he was still alive, Zhou immediately followed Xian out. Xian, who had yet to enter the carriage, heard the lightning bolt strike. He turned around and looked at King Hu's tent, which was still smoking. His legs went limp, and he fell to the ground. When the guards around heard the commotion, they immediately rushed in. When they saw King Hu's appearance, they all trembled from fear. After confirming that King Hui was still alive, they immediately brought him into the city to find a doctor. As for Xian, after King Hui had left for emergency treatment, he immediately returned to the city and found the county magistrate to tell him about this. When the county magistrate heard this, he immediately asked happily, "Is he dead?" "I don't think so." They were in a hurry to find a doctor. Mother God's words are true. Heaven's net has long arms. It seems that even Mother God can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow morning, we can take over the job at the construction site. When the county magistrate said this, he seemed to have thought of something. He sized up Xian and asked, "Xian, you and King Hui, Master, this lowly one's family is in King Hu's hands. Didn't you say you went to visit your family?" "I2 you dumbass. Do you know where they are locked up?" "I know. They're in his temporary courtyard. But I'm afraid that if I make a move, King Hui will kill them, so, how about this? You send someone to rescue your family members tonight and take them into hiding overnight. I'll write a letter to Master. But writing a letter to Master will take a lot of time back and forth. I think it's better to make use of the fact that King Hui was struck by lightning." "You mean to sway the people's hearts?" "Yes, the law doesn't punish the masses." "That's a good idea, but leave this to me. Take advantage of the fact that they are still busy saving King Hui to bring someone to save your family quickly. Remember, after you rescue them, go into hiding and don't do anything else." Chapter 617 Delivery Help. I hope we can meet again. Xian turned around and quickly left the residence. "Master, can he be trusted? Will he leak the news?" At this moment, a guard walked out from a corner and asked. "If it weren't for that lightning bolt, perhaps I wouldn't have believed it. I now need you to fan the flames and spread rumors of this to the masses. However, remember not to reveal anything important and just sow discord." "I understand. Now that chaos is brewing, I will act immediately." The guard received his order and turned to walk out. The county magistrate quickly wrote a letter and a memorial. The letter was written to King Rui, and the memorial was naturally for the emperor. Just as he was about to deliver them, Zhou took them away and whispered, "Don't forget your motives." After she said that, she directly sent the letter to King Rui through her inner space and threw the memorial before the emperor. The emperor was shocked when he was disturbed by the memorial appearing before him. He remembered Mother God's routine and immediately picked it up without making a sound. After reading it, he closed it with a bang and gritted his teeth. "Hui, you are really my good son. I am here trying my best to encourage the people to have more children, and here you are wasting the labor force. King Rui and Zhou Huaiming, who were playing chess at this moment, were stunned when they saw the letter falling from the sky. The two of them looked at each other. When they saw that the ceiling was intact, the two of them looked at each other again, and Zhou Huaiming finally opened the letter. After smelling the fresh ink fragrance, he paused momentarily and continued reading. After reading it, he handed it to King Rui. King Hui is such a beast. He's treating human lives like nothing. After King Rui finished reading it, his expression was not good either. However, he put the letter aside and said, "We don't need to worry about it. Since he has submitted a memorial, the emperor should have also received it by now. Mother God. Who else would have the ability to do so? True. By the way, since your wife is pregnant, aren't you supposed to go back? Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if someone is plotting against your unborn child. With Uncle Feng around, she'll be fine for the time being." On the other side, the county magistrate froze before realizing what had happened. He knelt on the ground with a thud. After he returned to his senses, he was even more determined to resist King Hu's tyranny. After Zhou Ying had settled everything, she arrived in Beiliao, a country in the north of the Ming dynasty. Because of the large production of potatoes last year, they were getting restless again. However, this time, there was internal strife in the royal family as the old king was dead. The princes were locked in an intense battle for the throne. Zhou Ying glanced at the princes and found that only the eldest had a faint purple aura surrounding his body. However, he was fated to die early, while the other princes had no purple aura. Therefore, the next king would not be born among them. Zhou Ying could not be bothered with them once she concluded that. The last thing that caught Zhou Ying's attention was that Chen Peng was looking for Gu Zi. Zhou Ying glanced at the Gu family. After ensuring they were fine, she finally found Chen Peng and his servant in the town's inn. Seeing that Chen Peng was already covered in an aura of bad luck, she knew that he was in big trouble. Since she knew he was the Zhao family's son-in-law, she knew he would not be able to act arrogantly after a few more days. Therefore, she just gave each Gu family member a safety talisman and withdrew. She busied herself in her interspace after that. She picked some ripe strawberries off a plate after finishing the rest of her work. After eating the strawberries, she took a shower and left her interspace. Lying on the bed, a wave of drowsiness immediately struck, and she fell asleep quickly. After breakfast tomorrow morning, Zhou Ying took Shizhu to inquire about the grape seedlings. She wanted to plant a row of grapes to make wine. Chapter 618 Spies. Ultimately, she discovered that while the Ming dynasty had wild grapes on their mountains, no one had ever planted them. This allowed her to discover a business opportunity. On the way back, she suddenly realized that her faith had soared. While absorbing it, she checked the specific situation through her interspace. Zhou Ying soon found the reason, and to put it bluntly, it was mainly the lightning that struck King Hui. Because of this, the county magistrate took over the construction site of the river embankment and doubled the compensation for the laborers who had died before. As soon as the news spread, not to mention the people under the Hui prince, even those ruffians and tyrants retracted their claws and trembled in fear. Therefore, people trusted Mother God even more and prayed ever so faithfully. At night, Zhou Ying told Gu Qingrui about her punishing King Hui and how Chen Peng went to look for Gu Zi. Gu Qingrui was surprised when he heard that. Chen Peng's is sure dense. Did he make trouble for the patriarch's family? Not for the time being, or maybe he's incapable of that. However, I have already given them protective talismans, so there shouldn't be any problems. Okay, please take a look at them every day. Gu Qingrui smiled. By the way, when I went to the office today, I heard that King Hui was summoned back by the emperor. I think it has something to do with that memorial. He is too ruthless. This person must not become the emperor. Otherwise, those who oppose him will all be executed. Indeed, he is even more ruthless than the current emperor. I'm sure the emperor is aware of this too. When King Hui returned, he might go to the extreme. You mean he might try killing his father? That's right. The emperor has been suppressing the first prince's faction recently. The empress and king prince are getting suffocated, and I'm sure this is very irritating to them. Otherwise, the empress wouldn't have created trouble for us at the banquet last time. That's true. With the empress' shrewdness, she wouldn't make things difficult for me in public. Oh, right. Did King Kong cause you any trouble these past 2 days? Zhou Ying asked. I've been avoiding him, so I didn't run into him. However, he sent someone to the manor to learn greenhouse planting techniques from me. In my opinion, he's just someone there to spy on me and sweet-talk me. As long as we were alone, he constantly praised King Kong and how much Princess Pingyang supported him back then. He would also proclaim how filial he was to Princess Pingyang and so on. It's getting a little annoying. Just be careful these days. Don't fall into his trap or let him catch something he can use against us. Zhou Ying suddenly asked, by the way, how's Lord Zhao? He didn't cause trouble for you, right? He is now a tiger without claws. He looks mighty, but the emperor is closely monitoring him. Most importantly, I heard that his wife and children are getting on his nerves. They are starting to bully the concubines he left in Pingyang province. Their days must be getting difficult, so Chen Peng shamelessly went to our hometown to rely on the Gu family again. Zhou Ying nodded. When you return to the manor, bring Niu Fugui. If he passes your test, you can let him be our butler. Uncle Zhou can manage the family, but he's getting too old to be presentable to the public. Alright, I'll try to find out more about him. If he's usable, you can also relax a little. Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. The couple washed up, and Zhou Ying spread her divine sense to scan the residence. After confirming nothing was unusual, she brought Gu Qingrui into her interspace. Chapter 619. Looking for a companion. While checking out the many different places, Zhou Ying glanced at the Gu family and left after ensuring they were safe. She didn't expect that King Rui and Zhou Huaiming had gone to a mother god temple to offer incense. What King Rui prayed for was for his residents to be safe. Zhou Huaiming instead prayed that all the border crossings would be peaceful this year. Additionally, Zhou Ying discovered that a few serious disaster-struck places, such as Pingyang province, had already begun to run out of food. Fortunately, traveling through the river was finally possible. Grain merchants transported grain from all over the country to these places without caring about the quality of it. The situation was still stable after factoring in wild vegetables and stocks of dried vegetables. Seeing this, Zhou Ying sprinkled seeds around the barren lands through her interspace, perilla, dandelion, amaranth, and hemp vegetables. She also released a batch of wild ducks, eggs, fish, and shrimp into their river before leaving. After she was done, she picked another batch of strawberries and stored them. Woof, woof, a dog barked, and Zhou Ying turned her head to see Gu Qingrui crossing the river with Zhuang. Zhou Ying smiled and waved her hand. When Zhuang heard her call, he barked even louder and ran even faster. Zhou Ying threw a strawberry the size of a child's fist directly in front of it. The strawberry was promptly eaten by Zhuang, who sprang up and ran to her side while wagging his tail. Zhou Ying saw this and gave him a plate of strawberries. When he lowered his head to eat the strawberries, Zhou Ying asked, Rui, why is he here? Isn't he living comfortably over there? It's spring, so I think he's going into heat. He's barking at the cows and sheep daily, scaring them so much that they aren't eating enough. That's why I brought him with me. Bring him to the manor tomorrow and find a companion for him. It's better for him to live outside. That's true. I'll be safer if there's a dog around too. Zhou agreed and picked out a large plate of strawberries. Let's go and eat these strawberries. They're sweet and tart. Gu Qingrui nodded and returned to the villa with her. After eating the strawberries, Gu Qingrui read his medical books while Zhou washed the dirty clothes and bedding in the interspace. The next day, after the morning court session, Gu Qingrui had just left the palace gates when he bumped into Nig Kong again. However, this time, King Kong wasn't here to persuade him. Instead, he asked, "Cousin, I'm wondering if you have some more tomatoes in your manor. Suji hasn't had an appetite recently, so I want to buy some for her to start her appetite. There really isn't any left. And as far as I know, the latest batch will be ready for harvest only in a month's time. I'm sure there's a reason for the lack of appetite. Eating some hawthorn is recommended if it is just ordinary stomach discomfort. That will have the best effect of boosting her appetite and helping her digest better. If she's pregnant, she's probably just craving preserved fruits like preserved plums." Pregnant? King Kong was stunned after hearing that and quickly remembered when Zhou Jiaying was pregnant. She had a big appetite but liked eating some strange things. Thinking of this, he was secretly happy but also knew that the later this matter spread, the better. He nodded and said, "I think I'm just worrying too much. All right, I will find a doctor to take a look. You sure have a caring relationship with your wife. I'll take my leave now." Gu Qingrui turned around and walked away after that. On the other end, after the Empress finished her breakfast, she checked the palace accounts. She pointed to Consort Shu's expenses and asked, "Mrs. Yu, what did Consort Shu do? Why did her expenses suddenly increase so much?" Chapter 620 The Reason Empress. According to this servant's knowledge, Consort Shu prepared a batch of tonics for Consort Kong, so she took 3 months of her allowance in advance. Advance allowance? When did the Prime Minister become so poor? Has anything major happened in the Prime Minister's residence recently? The Empress asked. Other than hearing that 7th young Master Su was struck by lightning, I haven't heard anything else. But 7th Su wasn't seriously injured. How could it affect the Su family's wealth? The Empress paused for a moment before continuing, "Investigate this, but be careful in case it's a trap." "Yes." At this point, Nanny Yu whispered, "I have received reliable news that Consort Rui is really pregnant, and it's almost been 3 months. When the Empress heard this, jealousy flashed in her eyes. Her son was the eldest and the first to get married. But 5 to 6 years had passed, and neither the princess consort nor the little vixens under her were pregnant. On the contrary, the 3rd and 4th princes had children one after another. No, she couldn't let them have children earlier than her son. Especially the 3rd prince. If he were to get a son first, the emperor would most likely be biased toward him. At that time, the 3rd prince would take revenge for what happened back then, and she would be in a bad position. Thinking of this, a fierce look flashed across her eyes. Think of a way to get rid of it. Remember to be careful and not leave any evidence. Yes, I will arrange it now. Also, make arrangements for the 4th prince. Don't let them get pregnant again. Yes. Nanny Yu bowed and left. After she left, the more the Empress thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Even if her daughter-in-law could not give birth, what about the other women in her son's residence? Why was there no news of pregnancy from any of them? Thinking of this, she immediately got up and summoned Imperial Physician Qin, who specialized in gynecology, to accompany her to King Hu's residence. She called the women of King Hui over and said to Imperial Physician Qin, "They'll have to trouble you to check their pulses one by one and see what the reason is. Why haven't they gotten pregnant yet?" When the women heard this, they immediately became nervous. After that, they started to discuss softly, but the Empress' gaze quickly quieted them. Yes. Imperial Physician Qin took out a pad from his medicine box. He looked at Consort Hui and asked, Consort Hui, the order. Let's start with me. Consort Hui Wangfei walked over and said. After saying that, she walked over and sat on the chair. She was so calm because she had found a doctor to check up on her before she got married. There was no problem with her body at all. Chapter 621 Denied. The group of women were dumbfounded when they heard that. What did he mean by sterilized? Was it what they thought it meant? When Consort Hui heard this, she felt her head buzz and could not hear anything else. All the womenfolk in the residence of King Hui have been sterilized. After Imperial Physician Qin stuttered, he didn't dare say another word. This matter was so severe. It was so severe that his head might fall. It was getting scary. After the Empress confirmed she had not misheard, she felt her vision darken and almost fainted. Fortunately, Nanny Yu quickly supported her. After a while, she returned to her senses and hurriedly said to Nanny Yu, inform all the guards to surround the entire place as soon as possible. Not even a fly is allowed to fly out. Also, inform the butler to bring over the roster of all the people in the residence. Yes, please rest. After Nanny Yu finished speaking, she called a servant girl who was still in a daze beside Consort Hui over and told her to inform the butler of their orders. Meanwhile, she found the captain of the guards and gave him her orders. For the entire day, the whole residence was in chaos. However, under the Empress' ruthless methods, she finally found the mastermind through the residence doctor, King Kong. However, how could King Kong admit to such an incriminating thing? The Empress couldn't beat him to force him to confess, so she dragged him back to the palace and told the Emperor about it. Although the Emperor was already annoyed with King Hui, he was still his son. Cutting off his descendants was infuriating to hear. It was no wonder King Hui had no descendants, even after so many years. At this thought, he felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't dare to think more. He looked at King Kong and asked, "Tell me. Did you do this?" From the Empress' expression of anger and despair, he already knew this was most likely true. However, he still had a glimmer of hope. He did not want his sons to act so inhumanly as to kill each other for the throne. Imperial Father, I've been wronged. You know very well that the Empress has always been hostile toward my mother and me. King Kong replied aggrievedly. No matter what, he would not admit it. Otherwise, his father would definitely give up on him. Do you speak the truth, my son? The Emperor stood up and asked again. Yes. King Kong raised his head and said it firmly. How dare you not admit it? You're not a man. The Empress yelled angrily. Imperial Mother, if you want to convict me no matter what, you have to produce some evidence to convince us. Don't you think it's too far-fetched to condemn me with just a few words from a doctor? Most importantly, this crime is so great that I cannot bear taking the blame. Indeed. Chapter 622 The Sterilization Incident. Although the Empress was unwilling, she still left in a hurry with Xiao Heng to find evidence. However, when she passed by Consort Shu, her eyes flashed with viciousness. When Consort Shu saw this, she knew their real war had begun. Li, send both mother and son back to Weiyang Palace. After the Emperor finished speaking, he couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention to them. After they left, the Emperor remembered that since the birth of the 9th princess, no child had been born in the palace for more than 10 years. He had not taken it to heart before, but now he was concerned. When Eunuch Li returned, the Emperor sent him out again. He had him bring Imperial Physician Qin to the palace to conduct a general survey of the mistresses of the various palaces. Once the investigation was done, they all broke out in a cold sweat. All the favored concubines in the palace had been poisoned with sterilization drugs, which forced the emperor to investigate this matter personally. Otherwise, he might even get drugged to death one day. In Weiyang Palace, when King Kong found out that the emperor had sent people to conduct a general survey in the palace, he looked at Consort Shu in panic and asked, "Mother, will he find out about us?" "Don't worry, before we went to his study, I had already made arrangements. It won't trace back to us." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. You just have to insist that you don't know anything." The palace was in chaos, but Zhou Ying was in a good mood. She had brought Heir Zhuang to her manor to find a companion for him. After returning to the capital in the evening, Zhou Ying subconsciously spread her divine senses to the entire capital. When she saw all the women in King Hu's residence despairing and lamenting as if their husbands had died, she quickly learned the whole story and what had happened in the palace. After dinner, Zhou Ying returned to her inner space and told Gu Qingrui how King Hu's and the emperor's concubines were sterilized. Consort Shu and her son are really ruthless. They're ruthless, and they've been preparing for many years. They definitely have a backup plan. I just wonder who will be unlucky enough to take the blame. I don't think they could push it to King Rui, right? It's hard to say, but it might be 7th Su. To their disbelief, the Empress report and the Emperor's evidence pointed toward Princess Pingyang. The motive was revenge. She wanted to avenge the Empress for causing her to fall into a pond in the middle of winter and lose fertility. She was also taking revenge on the Emperor for disregarding her wishes and forcing her to marry into the Gu family. Brother Rui, do you think it's credible? Isn't this just slandering the dead? Zhou Ying huffed angrily after receiving the news. Since all the evidence points to her, it means that Pingyang was involved somehow. Don't forget, Pingyang has been married to the Gu family for over 20 years but has never given birth to a child. There has never been any news of her getting pregnant. Therefore, it's not impossible for her to be involved in this. However, she's definitely not the mastermind, and it's likely that she had become a chess piece in Consort Shu's hands. Princess Pingyang is sure unlucky. She was a pawn from beginning to end. As long as they don't drag us into this, it's fine. Gu Qingrui replied. Zhou Ying was speechless when she heard that. However, if they were really so shameless, she would not mind changing the dynasty sooner. The next day, during the morning court session, Gu Qingrui huddled in a corner as usual, listening to the reports. After finishing the important matter, Prime Minister Su stepped forward and reported, "Emperor, the sterilization incident is already known. We implore that you punish the culprit." Chapter 623 2 Steps Forward, 1 Step Back Culprit. Do you mean to ask me to open the coffin and desecrate the corpse? The emperor narrowed his eyes and stared at him. He was not stupid. Although all the evidence pointed to Pingyang, he knew the real culprit was Consort Shu. However, he could not find any evidence and could only silently end this matter and investigate it privately. He did not expect that this old man would try to shift the blame onto Gu Qingrui. While the emperor had used Gu Qingrui as a target to find a balance in the middle so that his 3 sons could restrain each other, he didn't want Gu Qingrui to take the blame for others. As expected, Prime Minister Su continued, "As the saying goes, the son will pay for the mother's debt. Although Princess Pingyang is dead, she has a son." Gu Qingrui only narrowed his eyes after hearing that and had no intention of speaking out. The emperor looked at Gu Qingrui and asked in a bad mood, "Gu Qingrui, what do you say?" "Everything is up to you, Emperor." Gu Qingrui stepped forward and bowed. "What if I dismiss you from your post?" "So be it. I'll return home and plant sweet potatoes." Moreover, this official position was originally added to spread the sweet potato to the people as soon as possible. "Now that the mission has been completed, I will leave." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he bowed and waited for his answer. When the emperor heard him say this, he immediately remembered the reluctance on Gu Shengrui's face when he had given him an official position. He originally thought that Gu Qingrui was trying to act arrogant, but his reluctance seemed true after all. Prime Minister Su was also dumbfounded. He was trying to use Gu Qingrui to lure out the power King Rui had left in the capital so that he could eliminate it and make a move on Consort Rui. Who would have thought Gu Qingrui didn't even care about his position in court, nor did he intend to ask King Rui for help? What was his next step here? For a moment, everyone looked at Gu Qingrui as if they were looking at a monster. King An coughed dryly and said, "Qingrui, don't act on impulse." The Minister of Works immediately agreed. "That's right, Qingrui. You've just made some achievements and have a bright future ahead of you. You can't give up now. I'm not acting on impulse. I've already taught what I should teach, and the rest will need a great deal of time to continue researching. There won't be any results for a while. Now that Prime Minister Su has mentioned the matter of the son paying the mother's debt, I will take the opportunity to withdraw from the court and return home to be a commoner." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at Prime Minister Su with a strange gaze. The two had no grudges against each other, so why was Prime Minister Su forcing Gu Qingrui to resign and return to his hometown? Prime Minister Su received the gazes of the people and felt wronged. This was not his intention. A third-grade official is not a minor position. Don't you miss it? King Xian looked at Gu Qingrui curiously and asked. "Glory and wealth are just fleeting clouds. This humble official feels that living freely, living by oneself, is true happiness. Moreover, the higher the position, the greater the responsibility and the greater the pressure. As a scholar, my abilities are limited." The emperor didn't care if Gu Shengrui's words were sincere or not, but his move of 2 steps forward and 1 step back was used beautifully. Now, the court was on his side. The emperor stopped everyone and said, "All right, let's stop here. Pingyang's matter has nothing to do with him, and there's no need to involve him. As for your resignation, forget it. But it's true. I can see that there's nothing much to report every time you come to court. In the future, it'll give you a normal salary, and you just have to continue your agriculture research. You don't have to attend the morning court every day." Gu Qingrui was stunned by the verdict. Although it was a pity he didn't get to return to the countryside, he had at least gained something. He immediately went forward to thank the emperor. Prime Minister Su was unwilling to accept this abrupt end to his plans, but since the emperor had already decided, he couldn't bring it up again. Chapter 624 Unsafe. After the court session, Gu Qingrui greeted everyone goodbye and then ran away happily. King An looked at him, shook his head, and laughed. This kid is already of age, but he still has the temperament of a child. It's rare for someone to not care about fame and fortune. King Xian nodded. Honestly, he did not have any memorable impressions of Gu Qingrui. But Gu Shengrui's words today made him admire him a little more. He was clear-headed, not arrogant, and quite smart. After Gu Qingrui returned home, he told Zhouing about how Prime Minister Su had made things difficult for him in court and the outcome. "Babe, I'm finally free." Zhouing was surprised when she heard this, as she knew the emperor had ordered them to stay in the capital to use them. She didn't expect that he would protect them. Although his protection wasn't out of pure intention, it saved them a lot of trouble for the time being. Gu Qingrui added, "Let's go to the manor. After we're done here, we'll go back to our hometown and reopen our restaurant there." "Sure. Oh, right, we also have to plant chili and cumin here, especially cumin. Otherwise, there would not be enough for when our restaurants open." "No problem, we will clear a piece of land and plant those." The two of them continued discussing their plans, and it was determined that Gu Qingrui would be in charge of running back and forth while Zhou Ying dealt with the issues at the residence as quickly as possible. They would only go to the manor together when they finished. Conversely, Prime Minister Su's expression did not look so good. He never thought that Gu Qingrui, who was usually inconspicuous and had no sense of existence, would be so great at scheming. Gu Shengrui's 2 steps forward and 1 step backward had placed him in a position where he could not advance or retreat. He had vastly underestimated Gu Qingrui. Right, how could a person whom King Rui took a fancy to and protected be an ordinary person? Father, what's wrong? Did things not go well today? 7th Su walked in and asked. Yes, we underestimated the enemy. Gu Qingrui is much more cunning than we thought. Prime Minister Su replied. Oh, what happened? 7th Su asked in confusion. Gu Qingrui had some talent and skills, but in terms of politics, he couldn't compete with his father, who had spent half his life at the imperial court. Prime Minister Su didn't hide anything from him and told him what had happened in the imperial court. 7th Su replied thoughtfully, I feel that the emperor didn't completely believe the empress result. Or rather, he did not believe it at all. Otherwise, he would not have let Gu Qingrui off so calmly. Prime Minister Su nodded and said solemnly, the emperor is not a simple man, and he naturally won't believe everything. As long as he can't get hold of any material evidence, we're fine. So, we have to speed up. Otherwise, I'm afraid, King Hui was in a dire state, as much of his dirty laundry had been exposed recently. The emperor had probably given him up. Unless they forced him to abdicate, it was impossible for King Hui to ascend the throne. As for the sterilization incident, the emperor was definitely holding a grudge inwardly. King Kong wasn't so safe either. On the other hand, King Rui's military achievements over the years were plentiful. Promoting sweet potatoes to the masses was also a merit worth praising for 1,000 years or more. The key was that there was no negative news surrounding him. As for the 7th prince, to be honest, he was still too inexperienced. Without 5 or 6 years, he couldn't achieve anything. Therefore, their biggest enemy was King Rui. This was also the reason why he suddenly attacked Gu Qingrui in court. However, father, are you saying that the emperor is likely to be biased toward King Rui? 7th Su asked in disbelief. However, he shook his head and said, there's no way. Back then, in order to suppress the Zhou family, the emperor framed them many times. How can King Rui not hate him? Chapter 625 Discovery, You're still too inexperienced. Back then, the true culprits were the Empress, the Marquis of Dingan, and us, who also helped secretly. Our actions went along with the Emperor's wishes, so the Emperor followed the flow. Moreover, if the Emperor gave the throne to King Rui, do you think the Zhou family or King Rui would still hold on to a grudge? I see. Yes, but we still have to guard against the Empress. She is a poisonous snake. It will be bad if she targets us. 7th Su nodded and ate breakfast with his father. He ordered Su Qing, his follower, to find the servant in King Rui's residence. He ordered the servant to keep an eye on anyone coming and going from the residence. At the same time, he also checked the forces King Rui left in the capital. As for the Empress, who everyone was worried about, she was sick and could not even get up from her bed. But Marquis Dingan started to move after receiving the news. The first target was Gu Qingrui and his wife. No matter what, Princess Pingyang had participated in the sterilization incident, so she was not wronged. At the same time, they also sent people to attack the 4th prince's wife, and they discovered that Consort Kong was pregnant. Thus, he changed his strategy and instigated a fight between the 2 concubines. Zhou Ying did not know about this. Over the past 2 days, while giving orders to Mother Chiao and her husband, she had not relaxed her surveillance on Xiaoxiang. Finally, on the second day's afternoon, she discovered something unusual. Zhou Ying noticed that Xiaoxiang had asked for leave to leave the residence, and she immediately spread out her divine senses to follow her. She saw that Xiaoxiang had entered a relatively well-off small courtyard north of the city. After entering, she greeted an old woman sitting in a rocking chair in the courtyard, saying, "Granny Lu, Ziying is here to report. Go in. The leader is waiting inside." The old woman waved her hand. Seeing this, Xiaoxiang immediately entered the room and bowed. "Leader. Sit down. They didn't suspect you, did they?" A woman in her 40s turned around and asked. "Not yet. Any gains?" "Yes, the husband and wife are very cautious. They never let anyone enter their master bedroom. They wouldn't even let us get close to the bedroom. However, they are kind to the servants, so the residence was still relatively peaceful. They have planned to stay in their manor for farming activities for the next 2 days, and they mentioned they would only return after the grain festival. Anything else?" "No, the couple's diet is very complicated. In addition, because of the limited ingredients now, they would eat anything available." "How is their relationship?" "Very good, the best this servant has ever seen. Whether it is speaking or action, they are very tacit with each other. However, Lord Gu has always been concerned about the matters of the manor and rarely cares about the residents." "Zhou Ying didn't take the medicine, did she?" "No, by the way, Zhou Ying practices martial arts with a servant girl named Shizhu every morning and evening. According to my observation, she's not weak. Do you think you're a match for her?" "It's hard to say. I'm good at using swords, but Zhou Ying excels in close combat." "How confident are you if I order you to seduce Gu Qingrui?" Xiaoxiang paused for a moment after hearing that. She recalled the few times she had met Gu Qingrui and remembered that he had completely ignored her. She replied reluctantly, 20% confident. The leader raised her head and looked at her in surprise. Although Xiaoxiang was not very beautiful, she was delicate and charming. Her figure was captivating, and she was overall a beauty. The leader did not expect her to reply with such low confidence in seducing Gu Qingrui. It seemed that the Gu couple's relationship was unimaginably good. "Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, you still have to become Zhou Ying's confidant as soon as possible. Is there a mission?" Xiaoxiang's eyes lit up as she asked. Chapter 626 Intelligence Network. Have you forgotten the rules? The leader raised her head and looked at her coldly. "I'm sorry. I've crossed the line. All right, go back. Before you complete the infiltration mission, just in case, don't come over again." "Yes, I will take my leave." Xiaoxiang bowed, turned around, and left the courtyard. However, Zhou Ying did not leave. Instead, she waited a while and left after confirming that the leader wasn't contacting the mastermind. The organization that Xiaoxiang belonged to was very large. Zhou Ying wondered who the person behind it was. After dinner, Zhou Ying looked at the small courtyard again when Gu Qingrui was bathing. This time, there was only the old granny guarding the door. The young woman was nowhere to be found. However, Zhou Ying did not care about her whereabouts. Instead, she began a carpet search of the small courtyard. She found 2 books, a few letters, and a box of silver in a secret compartment. She took the letters and the 2 books into her interspace. After Gu Qingrui returned, she asked him to keep a lookout while she entered her interspace and looked at the goods. The 2 books were rosters, which recorded the name, gender, residence, and current position of their spies. There were more than 100 people in the 2 books. However, several residences belonged to the same masters, so not many people were spied on. Zhou Ying went straight into her study room in the villa, scanned the 2 books, and saved them onto her computer. She opened the letters, glanced at them, and noticed they were filled with information about ongoing missions. She scanned it into the computer again. After she was done, she folded them back and put them back in their original place through her interspace before leaving. Did something happen? Gu Qingrui asked when he saw her coming out. I guess so. I'll take a bath first. Let's talk in the interspace. She then turned around and walked out of the bedroom, asking Niu Lirong to prepare hot water for her bath. After he was done, she asked him to leave. She drank a cup of white wine after taking her bath. After ensuring no one was in the courtyard, she brought Gu Qingrui into her interspace. Then, she told him about her discovery today. There are only 3 possibilities. King Hui, King Kong, and the Emperor. We don't know which side it is, so let's look at the content we got. With this information, we can know who it is. Gu Qingrui entered the study room of the villa with her. After that, they printed everything out and read it all. Gu Qingrui focused on the 3 recent missions. The first was to confirm if Consort Rui was pregnant, which a spy in Lord Sun's residence confirmed. The next task was to get rid of Sun Myok's child. Chapter 627 Prince Yu's return. Well, just remind Uncle Feng, after all, she does not have as much control over the people in the residence as he does. Zhou Ying asked troubledly, but how do we remind him? We can't just go and tell him, right? How do we explain the source of our news? I'll go and tell him, and just say that it's a reminder. Uncle Feng isn't stupid. He's investigating everything that moves now. Gu Qingrui answered. All right, then you can go over tomorrow morning. After that, Zhou Ying checked the situation in various places through her interspace. Once she was done, she looked at King Rui's residence and found Sun Myok's personal maid, Qing Mei. She was a spy on the rooster. Qing Mei was on night duty. Zhou Ying withdrew after searching her body and confirming that there were no dangerous things. The next morning, Gu Qingrui finished his breakfast and turned to King Rui's residence. He reminded Uncle Feng of some things he should take precautions about and left. He pointed out a few areas, such as drugs, cold food, blood circulation food, tripping and falling, and also emphasized catmint. Uncle Feng, who was originally full of confidence, felt that he had been careless after hearing Gu Shengru's words. Thus, he didn't bother with the accounts and quietly rearranged the people around the residence. One rainy day, Qing Mei was about to apply oil to Sun Myok's shoes when Qing Tao caught her. Uncle Feng wanted to arrest Qing Mei, but she bit a poison sac in her mouth and committed suicide. Uncle Feng did not let out a sigh of relief and got even more vigilant. He also sent a letter to King Rui. 3 days later, after Zhou Ying taught New Delhi how to keep tabs on their accounts, the people in the residence were finally relieved. Just as she was about to bring Shizhu and Xiaxiang to her manor, King Hui returned to the capital. Zhou Ying glanced at King Hui. He was bald at the moment, and his head had some burn scars. Looking at his solemn expression, she knew that he already knew what had happened in the capital during this period of time. Zhou Ying didn't pay much attention to him and rushed straight to her manor. When they arrived at the manor, Zhou Ying got out of the carriage and walked into the fields with Shizhu and Xiaxiang. Xiaxiang saw this and asked in surprise, "Mistress, are you really going to head into the fields?" "Yeep. Planting melons and beans after the rainy season will reduce production if we miss this solar term. Can't you see that my husband is also planting watermelon seedlings in the field? Let's just help out as much as we can." Zhou Ying quickened her pace as she said that. When Shizhu saw this, she immediately followed. Xiaxiang was put in a difficult position. Although she was a servant and had done heavy work before, it was her first time working under the sun. She couldn't understand why Zhou Ying, the wife of a third-grade official, had to go down to the fields to suffer. However, no matter how unwilling she was, she followed for her mission's sake. Gu Qingrui saw her coming over and stood up. "Why aren't you wearing a straw hat?" "It's okay. I'll head back when it's hot." "What are you planting now?" "Watermelon and pumpkins." "Let's do it together." After Zhou finished speaking, she looked at Shizhu and Xiaoxiang and said, "If the two of you don't know how to plant them, help me bring over the watermelon seedlings." "Got it, mistress," Shizhu responded, and she went to get them. Xiaoxiang saw that some women were helping water the watermelons and felt it was quite easy. She suggested, "Mistress, I'll help you water the seedlings." "All right, do whatever you want." Zhou responded and lowered her head to plant the watermelon seedlings. After Xiaoxiang walked away, Zhou whispered to Gu Qingrui, "When we came out today, we bumped into King Hui, who had returned to the capital. I stole a glance and saw he was bald and still had some burns on his head. I wonder if he would be able to grow back his hair." Chapter 628 Xiao Jing, he deserved it. It's understandable that they fight each other since they were born in the royal family. It's also understandable that they eradicated the Gu family back then. After all, Pingyang stood on the wrong side. But he shouldn't have forced people to take sides. Also, it's wrong to kill them and find someone to replace them if they disagree. This time, it got even more outrageous. He used the lives of civilians as a bargaining chip, and I don't think it could be justified. Kings fight, and the peasants suffer. Zhou shook her head. Next, the two planted the watermelon seedlings together and stopped when it was almost noon. The two of them called Xiaoxiang and Shizhu back. "Hello, Lord Gu, Madam Gu." At this moment, a young man in his 20s ran over and greeted them with a smile. Gu Qingrui saw this and introduced him. "This is Xiao Jing, who was sent by King Kong to learn greenhouse technology. He even helped us with a lot of farm work." "Is that so? It must be really hard on you." "You're too polite, madam. In any case, it's learning to do more." When Xiao Jing said this, he looked at Zhou with admiration and added, "It's just that I didn't expect Madame Gu to be able to do farm work. I'm amazed. Didn't we stay in the countryside for more than 3 years? Otherwise, how could we cultivate those sweet potatoes?" "That's right. I'm really stupid for not thinking of this." "That's normal. No one can cover everything. By the way, what did you do before you came here?" "I used to grow vegetables in my manor. When I heard that King Kong was looking for someone to learn about building a new greenhouse, my father recommended me." "Your father must be King Kang's trusted aide." "Oh, no. He's just the head of the Hot Spring Manor." "That's also pretty good." "Oh right, how many people are there in your family? How old are you?" Zhou kept asking questions as they walked, not giving him a chance to ask anything. At the same time, she obtained a lot of information about him. Of course, he did not dare say anything more than he could. When they reached the manor, Xiaojing turned around and returned to the house where he was staying. Meanwhile, Zhou and the others returned to their courtyard. Mrs. Wu was picking vegetables and stood up and bowed to them before turning to Shizu. "Shizhu, there's hot water on the stove. Use as you like." "Got it. After I'm done, I'll help you cook." Shizhu then turned around and went to the kitchen. Xiaoxiang followed her in as well. Zhou and Gu Qingrui sat in the courtyard under the tree's shade. The weather wasn't particularly hot yet, so they cooled down quickly when they reached the shade. Soon, Shizhu and Xiaoxiang finished washing their hands, bringing out a warm water basin. After the couple washed up, they entered their house. After entering the bedroom, Gu Qingrui sat on the chair and said, "Babe, take out a few strawberries." My throat is as dry as the desert. Watch the door. Zhou reminded him and flashed into her interspace. She picked some big strawberries, washed them, and put them on the table. Gu Qingrui took one and put it in her mouth. The sun is even hotter in the afternoon, so don't go into the fields. Why don't you cook a few dishes later and let Qin He and the others come over for a gathering? They haven't returned yet. No, Qin He has taken a liking to farming after staying so long. Some time ago, I suggested that deep plowing and redding manure could increase harvesting production, and he followed suit. It looks like he's a reliable person. You should guide him well, as it'll make a great contribution if he can also excel in agricultural research. Chapter 629 Fishing. I had the same idea, so I didn't say anything when he wanted me to stay. Oh, what do you think about matchmaking Xiaojing and Shixiang? Gu Qingrui asked. At the very least, one of them must have the intention. Otherwise, if we force them, it would be troublesome for them to join forces to deal with us. Zhou replied. Let's wait and see. I'm really annoyed with Xiaojing. He's always looking for something to talk to me about, and he's like a sticky candy that I can't get rid of no matter how hard I try. Why don't you try to get him to talk and reveal more information? He doesn't have that much value, and I'm too lazy to spend that effort. When Gu Qingrui said this, he paused and added, oh right, the Lu and Yao family's greenhouse vegetables should be ready in half a month. They want to sell their vegetables through our connections. What do you think? Sure, it's just a matter of connecting them. Anyway, the restaurant has opened up, and we won't be selling vegetables anymore. Alright, I'll help them pull the strings. In the afternoon, after dinner, Zhou asked for a fishing net with a pole from Head Fong. Then, she took Shizhu to the river to catch some fish. When they reached the riverside, Shizhu walked back and forth and said, Mistress, there are not as many fish here as there are in the manor over there. There are a lot of people here, and there aren't many people around there. Naturally, there's more fish there. As Zhou said this, she threw the fishing net to her and said, why don't you give it a try? All right. Shizhu took the fishing net and excitedly started to get to work by the river. As for Zhou, she walked around the vicinity. Because there were paddy fields nearby, she soon found a lot of eels and loaches. She took a bucket and searched for the eels with her divine senses, and she soon caught half a bucket in a short while. By the time she returned, Shizhu had already caught 3 small fish the size of her palm. When she saw Zhou coming over, she smiled awkwardly and said, Mistress, I'm afraid we won't be able to eat fish for dinner tonight. The fish here are too small. Is that so? Let me try. After Zhou finished speaking, she took over the fishing net. However, she did not throw it out immediately and instead took a flour cake from her pocket and fixed it to the net with a rope. When Shizhu saw this, she said sadly, Mistress, you're cheating. This is common sense. This isn't a pond, so how can you catch fish without bait? Zhou shook her head. After that, she ignored her and scanned the water with her divine sense. In a short while, there were fish that smelled the bait and swam over. Zhou immediately caught 2 big fish and a few small fish in her fishing net. As soon as the fish entered, Zhou quickly shook the net. When the fish fainted, she promptly pulled them out of the water. She did not expect one of the big fish to run away still, leaving only the silver carp, which she wasn't a fan of. However, Shizhu still exclaimed, Wow, mistress, you're really amazing. Here, give it a try yourself. Sure, Shizhu responded, immediately throwing the caught fish in a bucket. She picked up the net again and threw it into the river. At this time, Zhou saw a black fish weighing 4 to 5 pounds swim past and used her divine senses to chase it into the net. After Shizhu felt the weight in the net, she immediately pulled it up. The fish was about to escape, so Zhou had to use her divine sense to attack it. The black fish rolled twice, and by the time it reacted, it had already come ashore. What a big fish! No wonder the net was so heavy. Shizhu exclaimed and immediately put the fish into the bucket. All right, it's enough for dinner tonight. Let's go back. Zhou concluded and picked up the bucket, returning to where they came from. Shizhu immediately carried the net and followed happily. Chapter 630 Guidance. When they returned, Mrs. Wu and Xiaoxiang had already prepared a few dishes. Zhou made another 6 dishes. Braised silver carp, black fish with pickled vegetables, braised eel with green garlic sprouts, spiced eggplant bun, shredded sweet potato, and cold sweet potato leaves. As for the staple food, it was steamed rice. Once the dishes were out of the pot, Xiaoxiang sniffed and said, "Mistress, these dishes really smell delicious." As expected of a restaurant owner. "Yeep, but you entered our residence too late. The dishes that mistress cooks during the new year are the truly delicious ones." The pig's offal and intestines were so fragrant that people wanted to eat more after a bite. But pig intestines are so dirty, can they be eaten? Of course, it's no worse than meat after it's cleaned. I love them, especially the spicy ones. Just thinking about it makes me drool. You gluttonous cat. If you want to eat, then learn to cook. I guarantee that you can eat whenever you want. Are the guys back yet? Zhou asked after teasing Shizhu. They're back and already drinking tea in the room. Let me know that it's time to eat. Zhou loaded the plate as she said that. Other than the braised carp, which she couldn't split, she left a small portion of the rest for Shizhu and the other 2 women. After the dishes were served, Chenhe walked over and asked, "Madam, did we disturb you?" "Don't say that. Since you're following Qingrui, shouldn't we take care of you?" Zhou asked as she handed the bowls and chopsticks to them. Yes, hurry up and sit down. You've lost a lot of weight since you came over. Eat as much as you can today. Gu Qingrui hurriedly invited them to sit down. At the same time, he poured a glass of wine for each of them. We thank you too for your hospitality. Head Fong smiled. Hurry up and start eating. Don't blame us if you fall behind, and don't eat your fill. Zhou urged them and picked up an eggplant bun for Gu Qingrui, which was difficult for him to reach. She also picked up one for herself and started eating. Seeing this, Chenhe and the others naturally didn't stand on ceremony and reached their chopsticks to the fish. After the meal, Chenhe and the others stayed behind to discuss farming ideas with Gu Qingrui. Gu Qingrui did not hide anything and told them the general direction of agricultural development. You mean we can breed new species through crossbreeding? Chenhe's eyes lit up. Yes, the most common type is melons. One year, I planted a gourd and a loofah together and was surprised to see them strung together. The loofah produced was massively different from others and tasted extraordinarily bitter. Although it was a failed example, it also means crossbreeding might work as long as it's similar plants. For example, wolves and dogs could also be crossbred. The puppies from such a lineage would usually be full of wolf characteristics, but if they were trained from a young age, it would be much easier to tame them than wild wolves. There are also donkeys and horses. Although the mules born this way are infertile, they still have their specialties, right? This is just a general direction. We can give it a try, and maybe we can cultivate something good. Let's try. Chenhe nodded thoughtfully. He quickly asked, "Oh right, Lord Gu, can I have a few melon seedlings? I want to try crossbreeding them with the loofah seeds." "Sure, but you don't necessarily have to plant all of them together. Melon flowers are divided into male and female flowers, so based on this, we can selectively choose a pair to crossbreed. Also, I think it's best to find wild ones to crossbreed. This can improve the quality of melons. Chapter 631 Testing Wild Ones. Are there wild winter melons around? There should be. Otherwise, where would our winter melon seeds come from? Weren't they found in the wild and farmed? But it might not be easy to find. There's also wheat. I've seen wild wheat before, and we could try crossbreeding them. However, this is a long-term and arduous task, and we must persevere. Chen He heard that and immediately found his direction. At the same time, he also understood that this was indeed a difficult task, as it wasn't easy to find wild crops to crossbreed with. He felt it was worth it because if they could increase harvest production, how many people's food problems could be solved? He nodded and said, "I understand. I hope you can persevere until a fruitful result." Gu Qingrui nodded. After chatting for a while longer, Chen He and the others took their leave. Once the couple washed up, they returned to their bedroom. After entering, they locked the door and entered the interspace. On the other hand, Shizhu and Xiaoxiang could only sleep in one room due to the limited number of rooms. After lying down, Xiaoxiang asked, "Sister Shizhu, has the mistress always headed into the fields or cooked personally?" "It depends. For example, she will go to the fields today to help plant the seedlings, as it is the solar term. Also, today was a treat. Mrs. Was cooking is fine for our daily meals, but it's not presentable for an occasion. This is why mistress had no choice but to cook herself." "I see. You're blessed to be able to enter the Gu residence. Although mistress is strict, but as long as you don't make any mistakes, she's very good to us servants." Shizhu asked, "Oh right, aren't you from the south? I don't hear any obvious accent in your words." "It's mainly because we live in a residence. For convenience, our masters and mistresses usually require us to speak in the proper dialect. Therefore, everyone must learn the official dialect before we can be sold as servants." After entering the residence, some servants still could not change their accents and could only do rough work for the rest of their lives. "Didn't Sister Shizhu walk the same path?" Xiaoxiang asked. "No, I've been performing on the streets in the north since I was young, so my accent has been like this since I was young." "Performing?" "Yes, juggling and some martial arts. It's with these martial arts that I obtained mistress appreciation." "I see. What does mistress like to eat the most?" "Why are you asking this?" Shizhu immediately became vigilant. There was nothing to hide if it was a hobby that did not matter, and she could openly tell her. However, some preferences, especially those for imported undies, must not be exposed. Otherwise, it would be easy to bring trouble to mistress. Xiaoxiang was shocked by her vigilance. "It's nothing. I just want to learn to cook her favorite dish so I can cook for mistress in the future." Xiaoxiang had seen Shizhu being careless over the past few days and did not expect her to be so vigilant regarding Zhouying. She was too careless. Shizhu couldn't figure out her intentions for a moment, so she could only respond, "That's true. I should also take the time to learn more about cooking. But I don't know what she prefers other than that she doesn't like to eat coarse food. For example, mistress doesn't like to eat noodles made from coarse and mixed flour." The two women tested each other, but neither of them told the truth. Finally, they fell asleep as they spoke. After Zhouying entered her interspace, she checked the situation on the southern riverbank. Ziyan was now in charge of the embankment, and although they were still working day and night, he did not mistreat the laborers. After confirming that the construction was also made with strong and sturdy materials, only then did Zhouying withdraw with ease. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.